Good evening and welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Today we have on Kasim Sulton. How are you today?
I'm good. And you?
I'm doing good. And we are actually
Good.
with Guy. Guy is also co-hosting today. We are
Hi,
huge
Guy.
fans of a lot of your work. Obviously, Utopia, but you've been in a billion different bands too that people may not
I've
even
been in a lot
realize.
of bands.
You have been in, and I mean,
Yeah.
like Utopia's not cool enough. Blue Oyster Cult, Joan Jett. Weren't you like kind of? You even did like a Johnny Eats Jazz album at one point. You were like everywhere. Like
Yeah.
Meatloaf, I mean, with 77 on Meatloaf, you did the Meatloaf album, and
Yes.
the song "Love Is the Answer" comes out. You guys did that album. That was in the tail
Yeah.
of the same album that year for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That was a great time in the music business as well as in music in general. A lot of new stuff out. People were, they were just consuming tons and tons of new music all the time. But I mean, pretty much the same as it is now. But
those melodies, though, there was a time period, though,
Yeah.
right? I'm saying like the 70s into the 80s. Then the rock picked up too a little bit. Those were the melodies you could get away with, some harmonies.
Yeah, there was some really great music being produced back then. And not that there isn't now, there is, but it just seems to be a little bit more cookie cutter these days,
Is that a challenge for you now, though, because you have been doing solo stuff too?
Yeah, it is. It is because on one hand, you really want to stay true to yourself as an artist. And do whatever, or go wherever your muse takes you. But on the other hand, you want to remain accessible, and you always want to get new audience members and stuff like that. So it's constantly a battle between, trying to stay relevant and true to yourself at the same time.
But your songs, although, is it a challenge to stay contemporary? Because I know there's a phase like you've done so many different types of music.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, though, do you have a certain style you feel like you feel like you have your own sound established because you've been in so many different bands and different sounds,
Mm-hmm.
And then trying to stay contemporary? Do you feel like there's a challenge to be who you are, stay modern?
At the end of the day, I really have well, I've worked with Todd Rundgren for 40 plus years. Yeah. And, I have a great respect for him because he never does anything to please anyone but himself.
Yes.
And his attitude is, if you like it, great. And if you don't, that's okay too. I would love to take a page from his book, but I'm a little bit more cautious when it comes to what I allow myself to do. I have a comfort zone that I like to work in, and anything outside of those parameters is just it's difficult. Yeah. So I'm a pop artist. I write pop songs. I love pop music. I'm not bound to any one specific genre, but my tastes do lend themselves to that stuff that I grew up with in the 60s and 70s and 80s, for that matter. And the challenge becomes, being in 2021 or 2022 and making music that right. fits other people's tastes.
How do you decide as a songwriter what fits? You don't sit down at the table and say, let me write something that the 2022 crowd's going to like. You write how you write. You get an influence or something, but
yeah. So there's a way. There's always a way to take something and kind of work a little production magic on it and make something that might be a little that might sound a little dated or might be a little bit like, oh, that's something that you would hear in the 80s or the 90s or even the early 2000s, and then do some production on it to bring it into the present. That there's all kinds of stuff, that manipulation that you can do these days that we didn't have available to us in the when I was coming up in the music industry. So you can make stuff sound old, and you can make stuff sound brand new, and then you can find that sweet spot in the middle. That's where I like to go.
You had a song. I'm actually just look over to my left, not being rude. Trying to Google it. It was Clocks. What's the full length that title of that song? It came out a couple of years ago. It's a beautiful song. I'm sorry if the full title escapes me. That was very contemporary sounding. It felt like it could just, if you didn't even know who you were, like you just would have been a new artist. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't dated.
Yeah.
That was that was a beautiful song, actually. I'm surprised that wasn't bigger.
Thank you.
Actually.
Thanks. So that was a self-release record. That record was released. That was an independent release by myself, and that's maybe part of the reason why it didn't get the recognition that.
You should sneak it back out there again.
Felt.
Maybe you should sneak it back out to the B-side. It's a pretty song.
Thank you. And as a matter of fact, when I wrote that song, I co-wrote that song with my friend Phil Thornalley. You mentioned Johnny Hates Jazz earlier, and that's where I knew Phil from.
Oh, okay.
And Phil and I work together all the time, and so he produced that particular track, and it was my attempt at trying to write a Utopia song without writing a Utopia song.
Really?
Yeah. Well, if you listen to it, and if you go back to probably one of our earlier records.
I actually heard you're doing like just an acoustic version first before I actually heard the other version of it.
Oh,
so to me, the unplugged version is even, to me, is the bomb. It's even prettier.
Yeah, I did it for some online magazine. I think.
Yeah, I was just trying to Google it. I'm like, what the heck was that? Really quickly, I couldn't find it. But it's a point of reference. It's beautiful. People check it out. It's nice.
Thanks.
Well, I'm a Utopia freak. I've been listening since I'm 11, so it's a thrill. And I've seen you do the Chasms Utopia. I've seen you guys when you did it with Todd recently. I guess that's a couple of years ago, right? When you came over.
2018.
I spoke to you after the show backstage. My friends with Mario from CAA. You know Mario.
Oh yeah, I love Mario.
Yeah,
he's great.
So I know one of the things that we talked about for a second was you weren't comfortable with that opening Utopia thing. That was the first Todd's Utopia when he was playing that stuff, and you were coming out and you were like, I'm not used to that Prague stuff that Utopia was doing. But I thought it was still great. But the show was amazing. I was so thrilled to see you guys back together and playing again. Any chance that that's ever gonna happen again with Todd?
I mean, I don't know. Todd's always doing something. He's always doing something different. He's not in my opinion, he's not a person that likes to go back and do stuff over and over again. It's unfortunate that we couldn't do it as the original 4-piece, but Roger was he was not really. He just didn't want to go on the road, and it's grueling. When you're in your 20s or early 30s, it's one thing to be moving around like this, but when you get a little bit older, it becomes just a little harder. But so that's why I decided to do my own version of Utopia, and as a matter of fact, I'm doing some shows next week with my band called, and for lack of a better name, it's called Kasim Sulton's Utopia, and we do all Utopia material. And I go a little deeper than the band did. I do a couple of songs that the band never performed live. And
it was great.
No, thank you very much. Yeah, we're at Sony Hall in Manhattan on July 27th. Ardmore Music Hall in just outside of Philadelphia on the 28th, and on July 29th we're at the Suffolk Theater on Long Island.
I know we have probably a couple more Utopia questions too, and then
sure.
But the new Cars that came out of left field. but made sense.
Mhm.
And then of course having Todd sing that, but then having a singing bass player that could do Benjamin's part. Who could do that that's affiliated with Todd? I mean, it was perfect that you guys came in together. I mean, you do a really good version of it too. I mean, it was a good band. It surprised me.
Yeah, I mean, that project, it was interesting because I've been friends with Elliot and Greg,
yeah,
for a very, very long time. As a matter of fact, one Utopia, I think it was 1978, maybe. We did a festival outside of Ohio called Legend Valley, and there was a bunch of bands that opened for. We headlined, Utopia headlined that show, and the Cars opened for us, and as well as Cheap Trick for that matter. We did a couple of shows
really?
in the mid 70s that Cheap Trick opened for Utopia. So I became close with some of the guys in the band, with Elliot and Greg.
He's awesome.
And
Elliot's
Dave.
awesome. Yeah.
Elliot's I
so
love
talented.
him.
I mean, I'm thinking really, he's awesome, talented, isn't he? Like underrated talented.
Yeah, he's incredibly talented and highly underrated.
Yeah.
But so I had known and worked with Elliot a lot over the years. As a matter of fact, Elliot played guitar on my first solo record in 1981, I think it was. But when that project was being put together, it started as a project that fell under Meatloaf's manager, a guy by the name of Alan Kovac. He put the project together, asked Todd to do it. Todd agreed to step in and fill Rick's shoes. I knew Alan from my work with Meatloaf, so Alan asked me if I wanted to come aboard, and it just worked out. And then Prairie Prince from the Tubes on drums, and the five of us. It was just a really
it's a good band.
It was like 2006 or something like that. It was a really good band. Unfortunately, Elliot hurt himself. We were on a tour bus, and this is like 3 weeks into this big tour that we had. It was like a 6-7 week tour. And we had all this momentum going and a lot of press, a lot of PR. And Elliot, the bus stopped short. Elliot was thrown into the front of the bus, the partition that separates the driver from the front lounge, broke his collarbone. Wow. We had to stop. The tour got cut short. And then by the time Elliot could come back and play, we had lost all of our mojo, and it was kind of it was a done deal by then. Hard to get it back.
Not even being called the New Cars. Like when I heard about it, I didn't know who's in the band. I said, "Oh, there's gonna be a new version, the New Cars." I'm like, the new something. It always feels like you're adding to it. What's going to happen to the original band? And you don't have to have all the original members. I'm not that's straight about it, but like the New Cars, how are you going to put like those main members in? I didn't get it. And then I saw who's on it. I was like, oh, like it does make sense. Like it feels like it's from the same family. You know what I mean? It's not like, it was a perfect fit. And then the clips, there's still clips, at least on YouTube. We can see you singing Drive and stuff, and your voice is very works with Benjamin's voice. It doesn't it's not like way out there.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we when we recorded the record that we did, because I think we did like a live record or something. I don't know if Drive is on it or not, but we were at Center Staging in Los Angeles, rehearsing for the tour, and really? At the same time. And Brian Wilson was in the next room, and and came in while we were playing Drive, and I got to sing that song, and Brian Wilson was in the audience. It was pretty special.
That's a little nerve-wracking though, right?
A little, yeah.
The guy that did Pet Sounds is watching you sing. You're like, oh.
Yeah, it was. I mean, and I'm a huge Beach Boys fan too, so they're just the best.
You were a Beatles fan too, right? From
Still am.
Right. So So when you started with Utopia, you were about 22 for the first album, Rock?
20.
20.
I had just turned 20.
It's funny. I think of the Beatles, then I think of Utopia, and I think about you guys were basically together the same amount of time, about 7 or 8 years,
Mhm.
right? From 77 to 86, I think it
70,
was.
76 to 85. So just about 9 years. Yeah.
And it seems to me there's a parallel that I see between you guys and the Beatles. That's a pretty thing to say,
Yeah.
but
minus a few billion records.
yeah. But you guys
And there's
no.
there's little Legos that you guys see there. I got the Lego submarine and the George Harrison picture there in Lego. So if you guys need some Legos made after you, that's what you need.
But
Utopia Legos.
You guys went through the same type of thing. It feels like, style wise and music wise, that in such a short period of time, you went from that Prague, raw album to the last album, which would be POV.
Mm-hmm.
And the Skinny Ties on the Utopia album, and that whole change musically. And then even when you did To Face the Music, which was basically a Beatles album.
Yeah. So the band prior to me joining was it got whittled down from like a 7-piece band with 3 keyboard players. I think it was Roger Powell, Jean-Yves, and Ralph Schuckett at one point. Willie on drums, Todd, John Siegler. So 6-7 pieces. And with background singers, like I think it was a couple of Luther Vandross was did a tour with Todd at one.
Really?
Yeah,
they only did
Luther. Luther Vandross was one of the background singers, and David Lasley was the other one. In any case, so it started as this prog rock project that Todd put together, and actually it started with the Hunt brothers, Hunt and Tony Sales, in the early 70s. And if you go back, there's a picture floating around on the internet of everybody with these helmets on, and it's Daft Punk. It is the exact same picture. If you look at it now. So it started off as a 3-piece band, then Hunt and Tony left, and then Todd started adding other people to the band, and then just the curve went back down to just prior to me joining. It was a 4-piece band again. It was Roger, Willie, Todd, and John Siegler on bass. And then John left, and that's when I joined. So there was still remnants of the prog elements of the original Utopia, but slowly, when I joined the band, Todd was promoting his album Faithful, which was pretty much a pop record, not a Utopia record, because it was a Todd solo record, and Todd always did something different on his solo records than he did with Utopia. But I kind of brought in a little bit of a more pop sensibility. So we started off with Ra, but yet there was an inkling of pop music on Ra as well, because we did stuff like Magic Dragon Theater and Eternal Love. And so there were a couple of songs that weren't really prog rock, so to speak, but they leaned a little bit more towards the pop genre. And then by Oops, Wrong Planet, which was the second record that I did with the band, we were getting a little more poppy, but still kind of with we still had a prog rock edge. Then by the third record, which was Adventures in Utopia, we were just full on pop band, because I think that we found a way to kind of blend it all together and still be true, or at least Todd and Roger, and Willie for that matter. They were still, still loved where they came from musically, but were willing to to go in another direction and have the records be a little bit more on the pop genre. Then by the network record, which well actually, and then it was swing to the right, then network. So it just, by the time we were finished, it was just full on pop music.
Yeah.
But the 70s, but I always think, like, if you look at bands from the 70s and the 80s, and it says a lot as a testament for you, and of course Todd and all the others that are in bands of different styles and genres and are still now performing, and the music's come back. There's a time, like, it was like in the early 70s, people were struggling for like a sound. Like, is it gonna be prog? Is it rock? It was like a battle for like, what's this in style music? Bands didn't like the labels. Everyone's kind of like fighting for what's the sound going to be in the evolution of the end of the 70s, the 80s. What's the style of music? So I mean, the band evolved obviously with the times and stayed current. You know, may not have been on purpose, but it pretty much follows. You know, and it still has a loyal prog fan base, but huge pop songs too. You know. So you really kind of danced in both, you know, you're at both parties.
Well, I mean, if you look at the last record we did, which was POV, I think, actually, it was Trivia. Trivia was the last record that we did. And I think there were 2 new songs on Trivia, Monument and More Light, both of which I do in my solo show. And I sing lead on both of those songs, and they are a really, really good example of the marriage of prog and pop, because there are some prog elements to both songs and some pop elements. So you know, it really was a very democratic band when it came to genres. We you know, we tried to hit as many different you know, go to as many different places as we possibly could within the same within the confines of one record.
And as players, you're all great players, and you also all had, you know, the voices for the band that really blended together so well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we sang really. If you look at some of the at some of the YouTube videos that are out there of our live performances, I mean, even I'm impressed with how well we sang and played at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
These days, it's, you know, it's like somebody else, you know, it's like, as long as you're playing with a click, you can kind of augment everything. But we didn't have any of that back then. Back in the old days, you know.
But that's what I was saying.
So we had
harmonies. You guys are so good like that. That's, you know, the whole point of that.
Yeah, we just, you know, it was one of those things where I guess Guy mentioned that, or I don't know, Sean, maybe you mentioned it, but it was like the similarities between us.
Thanks,
I
Guy.
really don't. It's kind of sacrilegious to compare anybody to the other that band from Liverpool, but you know, we just, there was a chemistry between the 4 of us that 100%. Was really, really worked really well. So and you never really realize what you got until it's gone. So I miss it every day.
Oh yeah, and the you know, again, the show for me, I mean, the last time I saw you guys, I guess it was 85, 86. You played at the Pier in New York City as Utopia. And then when you played over here at the Paramount a few years back, I mean, it was amazing. It was like nothing changed. Obviously, without Roger, there was a little bit of a difference, but still the sound, the playing, you know, the blending of the voices, it was amazing. Hope to see it again. But I loved the Kasim's Utopia too. And
oh, thanks, man. Really, yeah, thanks. I have a lot of fun doing that show. It's a lot of heavy lifting, but I'm more than happy to be doing it.
How do you have this set up now? Like, because sometimes you do stuff with Todd, and like, you seem like you have a revolving cast of stuff, and we actually can lead into some of the stuff you're doing now, because you're doing some stuff with Todd, playing with him, but you also do your solo stuff, and you also do Kasim's Utopia, right? So you kind of like maybe three at least different projects.
4, sometimes
4.
5.
All right,
yeah.
I'm not in your brain.
No.
I'm saying, so you got a lot going on. How are you finding a balance of like this here and here? I mean, is it just that organized, or is it like, that's a lot?
You know, I mean, listen, I also have a radio show. I do a weekly radio show that we're on in 9 markets, everywhere from Bangor to New York City, right here. I'm in Kingston, New York right now. So I'm on WDST every Sunday night at 7 p.m., which is a radio station in Woodstock. We're also on in Bangor, Maine, and Roanoke, Virginia, Bowling Green, Kentucky, El Paso, Santa Fe, Big Pine, California. It's on terrestrial radio. It's a show called It's My World and Welcome to It. And I do an hour of just like, I think this week coming show is it's called The Eyes Have It, and all the songs are about eyes. So I play Eyes Without a Face, Snake Eyes, Angel Eyes. I have a great time doing my radio show. It's a really, really cool hour of radio. So I have that. Then I also have this other project that I'm working on called the Gilmore Project, which is a celebration of Pink Floyd. I do that. I just finished touring with that in May and June. And then I came out with Todd in the second half of late June through July. And then later this year, I do some more Gilmore Project dates. I do my solo shows, and then hopefully by the end of the year, I'll do some solo dates because I still haven't gone out and promoted my record, Kasim 2021. So that's a record that I just did and was released September of 2021. And I still have to go out and play shows behind that record. So hopefully I can do that late November, early December.
So you've been a busy guy since 20 years old. It's like you haven't stopped. You haven't missed a beat.
No, I mean, I've been really, 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 really lucky. And, and I'm somehow managed to stay healthy. And it's funny too, because, it seemed like growing up, you look at your parents and your dad and your mom, and they kind of like, when they get into their 50s and 60s, they're like, well, we're thinking about retiring, and we're going to slow down. And, I did my work. I raised my kids. I blah, blah, and did all that stuff. And it's time to, we're going to go maybe get a place in Florida and then go on a cruise. And for me, it's like, I look at going on a cruise as work. It's like now the big thing these days are rock cruises, everybody's doing them. And I seem to be working more as I get older, which I'm happy to do. I am absolutely happy. We were on stage last night in Albany. We played in Albany, New York. And just before I went on stage, I thought to myself, I was like, I am just so lucky to still be able to do this and make a living at it. And I love what I do. I don't know that I ever want to stop.
How could you not?
The audience might want me to stop at some point, but it's like, no, please.
You've played with so many great people and done so many different things. I mean, 10 years with Meatloaf as the director.
17,
geez, sorry.
Yeah, 7. That's okay. That's all right. That was a great time. I absolutely loved working with Meat. When I did the first Bat Out of Hell record in 1977, and then I didn't really work with Meat again until 1993 when Bat Out of Hell 2. Well, actually, we did the backgrounds for the record. Todd, myself, and Rory Dodd did the backgrounds to that record in 1992 or 91. And then a year later, Meat called and said, I need a guy in my band that plays guitar and keyboards and sings. You want to do it? And I'm, yeah, sure. So I signed on, and then the record exploded, Bat Out of Hell 2, which is like lightning striking twice in the same spot. And then for the next 17 years, it was just a whirlwind of, 6 months on the road every year, 4 of those months in Europe and in England, the other month and a half, 2 months in this country. And it was just a really, really cool time. really, really good time, especially the time that I spent as his MD, which was I got to put bands together and make sure that everybody was playing the right thing and singing the right notes.
Yeah.
Has the gear changed for you over the years as a musician?
Yeah, it's gotten a little bit smaller. It's gotten a little easier to navigate. You know, I was never one for a lot of like effects and compression and EQ, and it's like I always felt as a bass player, especially, that you know, everybody else gets to have the effects and everybody else gets to do all the, you know, the schmutz and giggles and all that stuff on their gear, but the bass player like should probably, you know, not do that.
You don't need
because otherwise it's just, yeah, you don't need it. You really don't need it. So
well, Guy was actually is a bass player in a band, actually a couple albums out and toured too. So another.
I don't use any effects either. I always felt like I tried the distortion or the different this and that. It never worked.
So have I.
It takes away from the song. It takes away from the song, I think, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's always there might always be a one or two times where you might want to use something like that, but for the most part, especially these days when your guitar player has a pedal board that's 4 feet long and has every single effect on it that you could possibly think of, and sometimes two of each, you want to just, in my opinion, you want to stay away from that, because it's just it's like nobody hears that anyway, you know. It's like, especially if the bass, actually the funny thing is that the tour that I just did with Jeff Pivar and Prairie and Mark Karen and Scott Guberman, the Gilmore stuff, I used a couple of pedals, and yeah, I had to, because I just had to. They were like, you really need to have an effect on this. I was like, whatever, I'm fine. So a buddy of mine works at Eventide, and I got a H9 pedal from him. And which is it's a great pedal. You should get yourself an H9 for sure. If a bass player needs a pedal, that's the pedal to get.
Sweet. So actually, you're working right now with Todd also. What's the name of the band? Because we off the air talking. What's the Todd project you're doing now also?
It's called his Unpredictable Tour. So basically what it is it's Todd working but relaxing at the same time. So we go out, we play 3 or 4 songs that are fan favorites. And then Todd, they bring out a little chair and a little table, and Todd sits down and has a martini and plays whatever comes to his mind. And we don't know, as a band, there's a list of about 50 songs, and we have no idea what song he's going to call at any given time.
Wow! So
it could be anything from "The Walls Came Down" by The Call, or "Muskrat Love" by Captain and Tennille, or "Are You Having Any Fun" by Tony Bennett, or "Lonesome Prairie" by Lorne Green. Or "Don't Bogart That Joint," whoever did that. Or "Incense and Peppermint." So, see, now I'm giving it all away. So, so we do all those. I mean, he could call any one of those songs at any given time.
So really, it's a new show every night, pretty much.
It's a new show every night. There is no set list. And then after about an hour of the Unpredictable, he picks up his guitar again, and we play about another 3 or 4 songs that are fan favorites, and then we end the show.
That's actually really smart. Kind of sandwich it in, mix it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, you're from Staten Island, right?
I am from Staten Island, yes.
And,
so we'll leave it at that.
No, I always just knowing, where people came from, whatever, and you just being a New York guy. Yeah. Your name, Kasim Sulton, always seemed so, like you came from the foreign lands of somewhere far off.
Yeah.
Well, you had to be a rock star with that name, or a supervillain. That's like the coolest name ever.
Or completely ostracized growing up.
I'm sure, right?
Because you're not Billy, Bobby, Joey, Charlie, Jimmy, Timmy.
Well, look, I had the same thing. Guy is, one of those names, but Kasim,
Kasim really
very
stands out.
different name. It is. What's the descent from?
So my dad is Arabic, and he just thought it might be a really good idea to name me differently than people are named. And to his credit, I love my dad. He's been gone for a very, very long time. It was really, really hard growing up. It was very, very hard in the early 60s to have that kind of a name. Nobody had a different name. These days, everybody has a different name. It's like somebody's named Coffee Cup, or it's like, oh, okay, his name is Coffee Cup.
Great. Now I get people
That's
writing
fine.
in named Coffee Cup. Thanks a lot. There goes half my audience. Sorry, Coffee Cups.
But in the early 60s, it was just, you didn't hear that name at all. And so I remember calling a friend from it was one of the first times I used the phone. I was like, I got to call Stevie and see if he can, come out and play. And I called and I was like, hi, Mrs. Stevie, this is Kasim. Can Steve come out and play? And I was met with, who? It's Kasim. Catherine? No, Kasim. What? No, he doesn't know anybody by that name. Click. And I got, it was like traumatic. I was scarred. But then I meet people all the time who say, that's a really cool name, and you're very lucky. So there you go.
Well, now it is, but I can see going really hard. No. And the world's a lot more open now too. Yeah, it wasn't as the kids were awful back then. You couldn't be anything different.
Yeah, kids were pretty awful. Yeah.
I mean, they're still pretty awful. I have some of my own, so
Sean. Sean is like kind of a it's not mainstream name when we were growing up.
No, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. I got I wasn't even named right. The nurse, my mom tried naming it like I think SEAN or something, and in the hospital, the story is that the nurse is fully Irish, and she says, no, that's not how we do it. We spell it this way. And on the birth certificate, she spelled my name SHAWN against my mom. And that's the story I always heard. I'm like, I don't know if that's really true. And, and I had somebody on the show. It was a band, is all Irish music, right? And I'm like, I'm going to ask these guys. Turns out everybody in the band is 100% German. So I was like, so you guys will be able to tell me this? He's like, I'm a German. I'm like, what? You're an Irish band. We're all German.
That's great.
So,
that's
a little side note there, but that just ruined it for me. So I'm like, I haven't pursued that question ever since. So I'm like, oh. Pretty funny.
Well, we all have our cross to bear. We're doing a very, very interesting thing on that show, on all three shows. I'm having the local School of Rock, the student bands open for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is my, I really wanted to do something to promote young people getting out and playing music. And I thought that would be a really cool way to get some kids on stage. And I'll perform a song with them, actually a Todd song. With all three bands, and it's just to have a good time. They'll only play for about a half an hour, 35 minutes, something like that.
Yeah,
cool.
I own a music store in Long Island, and I had out in Suffolk County, I had a school like the School of Rock. It was called Rock and Roll University. We did the same thing with all the bands and everything. So we had the kids play like City Field on third base before the games and everything.
Yeah, that's great.
The kids, and we had some really good talent come out from it too.
Yeah, I mean, I know that when I was growing up, if I had an opportunity to do something like that, I was there in a heartbeat. I mean, I remember just like we had to beg people to be able to play sometimes, and it was always a struggle, and we would just. When I was 13, 14 years old, it was like we would have played anywhere. It didn't matter. You know.
I was dying for guitar. I couldn't even get a guitar, so I got even with them.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, you got a nice little lineup back there, Sean.
All my kids play. So
Oh,
ironically,
cool.
yeah, my parents didn't support it, but when I got older, I
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah.
My daughter plays bass and keyboards. My other
Oh,
son
that's great.
plays guitar, and I started playing guitar
Uh-huh.
about 5 years ago. So
Oh, good.
yeah, we won't play together. I won't play with Dad, but they still play separately.
Yeah, my kids don't play. My kids, they have interests elsewhere.
It's all good. It's all good as long as they stay out of
Yeah.
trouble, right? So people,
Yeah, exactly.
I want to recommend everybody that doesn't know who you are, go on the Googles, the internets, like the kids say, and look up. You can go to Wikipedia. It's pretty much probably mostly accurate. Who knows? Look at all the stuff that Kasim's been on. There's a lot of stuff. You'll be like, oh, I didn't even realize that. You're one of those artists that you're like, I didn't even know you did that song. You know, even I was discovering stuff, and I'm like, what? Like the giant is jazz. I'm like, I didn't know that you're involved with that. So I encourage people to check that out. The link for the website is going to be there. If they're in the area, check you out. Your new album out, promote that one, check it out. And the clock song I was talking about too. Everybody find the song itself, but the acoustic version too. It's really good.
The acoustic version is pretty cool. Yeah, I should.
I really love that one. I do. I think that. So I want to thank you for being on the show, man.
Thank you so much, Sean. I really I enjoyed talking to you guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, have me back anytime.
I will.
Awesome.
How's that?